Hello and welcome, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great Thursday, your pre-Friday to your Friday. My name is Hayden, and I have the honor and privilege to be your moderator today. I'm excited to see how today's topics will assist you and your team in taking not just your SharePoint environment, but your business to the next level. A few things to mention before we jump in. First, you may have noticed when you all joined that your mics are muted. That is by design. So if you have questions or comments during the presentation, we do encourage you to utilize the QA chat feature in your toolbar. There, our team will be able to answer your questions in real time as we go through the presentation. But once the webinar does conclude, we'll move into a live Q&A session in which we'll allow users to unmute and ask questions to our team in real time. Just a heads up, those questions don't need to be just about what we covered in today's webinar, but any of your 365 environment questions. We'll go over that more in detail later. Also, be on the lookout for our next webinar in your emails as it comes up. But at this time, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Michael to give you all a brief message. Over to you, Michael.
Hey everyone, and welcome. If you've for a dataBridge client and you've been here and done that, you know we're going to review Microsoft's features and functionality updates that they come out with regularly and kind of keep you informed. That's the point of SharePoint Concierge, and especially in this episode, we're going to cover when Microsoft takes what they've had that you're used to, the user experience, and then move stuff around. So today we got a lot of information. We're going to jump right in just a minute. Katie's going to walk through the SharePoint weather, world clock, events, web parts, and knowing that they're switching from Bing Maps to Azure Maps. And so she'll walk you through what's impacted and what you need to do there. Ken's going to review the document library user experience. I'm sure it is rolled out in your environment. You may have noticed that, hey, the upload and this and that, the views, all of that's different today. So he's going to walk you through and let you know where everything is. Dylan will go through the modern FAQ web part. This is probably the slickest thing, easiest, super easy and quick way to transform content into a power component that it will reduce confusion, cut down on repeated questions, and most importantly, improve self-service access to folks looking for information across your intranet. And then lastly, if you are an end user, power user, Leona's going to cover the most common mistakes organizations make in SharePoint. If you manage permissions of any kind, you'll want to stick around for that. So that, plus at the end, put any questions you have along the way in the Q&A. We've got experts on the call that'll answer those in real time, but we welcome questions around 365, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, Copilot. At the end, we'll try to do our best to answer any of your questions then. So with that, I'll hand it back to Hayden.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. As Michael was saying, we have a jam-packed schedule. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on into the first topic. The Bing map is moving and how that impacts you, taught by Katie. Over to you, Katie.
Thanks, Hayden. So this is actually going to be a pretty quick but important update. So Microsoft is migrating from Bing Maps to Azure Maps. So this rollout has already begun, and it's going to be completed by late April. So ultimately, the only potentially affected web parts are actually going to be the map web part, and then if you use any custom solutions using Bing Maps. So there really shouldn't be any change for the end user. There are going to be slight changes. So for example, the web part, instead of being called Bing Maps, is simply going to be called Maps now. And they're getting rid of the business entity search, Street View, and Bird's Eye. But that's to kind of move to this more reliable Azure backend platform. So really, the biggest takeaway that I want you all to have is that if you are using any of those web parts or using custom solutions using the Bing Maps, that you're going to want to check those pages and those web parts, make sure that they are working as expected. And I'm going to show you kind of a way to be proactive and make sure that there's not going to be any disruption to that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring over my other screen here. So what we're going to do is add the new domain to the allow list. So this only needs to be done on your root site. And the way that you're going to do that is you're going to go to the gear. Then you're going to go to site information. You could go to view all site settings. Then from there, under the site collection administration section, you're going to go to HTML field security. And you're going to type in the new domain. So that's atlas.microsoft.com. You're going to put it right in here and hit add. And you can see if we go to the bottom of the list here, it's now allowing that domain there. So we're going to hit OK to save it. And that's really all that's going to need to be done to ensure that everything runs smoothly. So with that, I am going to pass it back over to you, Hayden.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. Short, sweet, and simple. You know, whenever changes like this happen, we try our best to let everyone know as soon as possible so they can be proactive and limit any risk of your features not working or having any issues with it. So be proactive, look into this, especially if you know you have something that does pull straight from the Bing Maps so that you have no interruptions on your end. Thank you so much, Katie. All right. On to our next segment. It's taught by Ken, who will teach us about the most recent SharePoint document library changes. Over to you, Ken.
Hey, thanks, Hayden. So the document libraries are undergoing a dramatic change in their UX UI, and we think it's appropriate to address this a little more formally than other changes across your enterprise. This is probably something you're going to want to have at least a little bit of training, perhaps a job aid for your staff. And that's because some of the changes make some features that people might want to use either obscure or difficult to use. The changes are at the document libraries themselves right now. I suspect many of these changes will come to the lists, if not all of them. That's because I'm seeing here and there individual features coming over to the list side of the house. So the other piece that's incredibly important is that we're seeing a addition of AI actions being added in. The AI actions you will only see if you are licensed to use Copilot. If you don't have the individual license to use Copilot, then some of the UI elements that you'll see on my screen when I demo the features won't be there for yours. The AI actions are interesting. They've added a couple that I think might be really powerful for staff, especially for those staff who might have some visual disabilities. There's some actions that do readouts for folks in an audio version. So we'll take a document and summarize it in audio form. I think that's fantastic. And there are some others that tie into things like the FAQ that we're going to take a look at when Dylan demos the feature. The breadcrumb navigation has changed pretty significantly. In an attempt to save space, Microsoft is collapsing the header block down by a full line. And what that's doing is it's making multiple functions share a line. So the breadcrumb navigation, which allows you to step back in time if you're in a subfolder structure, that will change pretty rapidly because it doesn't have as much space as it had in the past. The actions form a submenu. That submenu can cause a problem if people aren't aware of what it does. The filters show up now as pills. Unfortunately, they do not take some of the standard UI elements that Microsoft has used for decades. In other words, things like the close X don't appear on them. That lack of a close X can cause people to not understand how to reset individual filters. So we'll take a look at that. The view picker has changed and the views show up as pill icons as well, and they now have menus associated with them. That can potentially be problematic as people aren't quite sure where to take an action, where to trigger a particular action. The menus overall have changed quite dramatically. We've gone from what was a cohesive singular menu type approach to now 4 menus spread across the user interface. Some of the functions are duplicative, others are not. And so you need to just learn the new areas where things are, but it can be a little jarring. The AI actions, like I mentioned before, have some new features which I think are great. Create an audio overview, I think would be immensely powerful. I was not able to get it to work on my demos when I tried it, but I suspect that Microsoft's still ironing some stuff out in the background. But I think that feature would be great for those who are visually impaired or who prefer to listen to their content. The create an FAQ ties in the feature Dylan will demonstrate. There's the traditional ask a question, just type in a English language chat type questions, just like you would with ChatGPT. It has that feature available to it, and then it has the ability to summarize your documents. The pros of this is that the ability to launch into things like workflow actions are being handed to the users in a little bit better mode. So if we look at the idea of how would we have done workflow in the past, we've seen things like quick steps and rules get rolled out, but our go-to has usually always been launch the Power Automate platform. Now we have this idea of a true workflow feature that's actually called workflows. It is available in both lists and libraries, and that allows you to create what I would consider to be simple, not even medium grade, really lightweight, simple automation solutions. What's happening on the back end is you are actually creating a Power Automate flow. It's using testing or a templated based approach so that when you go in, you'll have a whole bunch of options that are available to you. There are dozens of different great templates that are out there. Send an email when X action occurs, post a chat message when Y action occurs, and so on. And those are fantastic, but they're very limited in that they tend to be single action only. And if you begin to need to customize that or extend it in any way, you're going to be dropped into Power Automate and you can't reverse that. So if you start with the simple and you move to the medium or the complex, you have to stay in the medium or the complex. But it will give users the ability to begin to dip their toes into the Power Automate realm without ever having to look at the Power Automate interface or to launch anything, which I think is fantastic. The rules engine is still there, and it has undergone a few additional changes. Its icon has moved. It's into the integration area now. Automate isn't there any longer. In addition, Quick Steps is there. You also can see in the libraries section, the approvals function is there. I have seen the approvals function intermittently in the lists. I'm not sure why that is, but I have seen it in the lists occasionally. So the UI changes are pretty dramatic. Muscle memory, for the most part, for those of you who have been using this tool for quite a while, will be severely hampered. Things like where the new button is and what the new button is even called are dramatically changed. It's no longer top left, it's now top right, and it has undergone a relabeling. So that's a particular issue. The filter panel, the filter icon doesn't use Microsoft's classic filter icon iconography, which it's used in every tool that I can remember going back decades. They now have a brand new icon. That icon does not really look like a filter, and so people can get a little tripped up on that. In addition, the filter panel has some changes to it. It does not appear to work the way it has in my experience. Ever since moving over to modern, that panel's worked pretty consistently, and now it seems to be working a little differently than it has in the past. So it's something you may want to keep an eye on as well, because it can trip some people up. The ability to work with standard folders, that command is one of those duplicated commands. We'll take a look at that. Again, the idea of the breadcrumb trail being a little crimped in terms of its space because it's now sharing space with a menu that it wasn't sharing space with before. It gets worse if you have AI enabled because that AI block takes up an additional inch or so of your real estate on your monitor. So if you're running at a standard resolution, your breadcrumb trail gets really short really fast. All right, so take a look at those changes. I'm going to start with a list just to kind of give us a remembrance of what it used to be like. We used to have our new button here in the left-hand side, and then we would have our command bar, and we would have our remaining actions under our menus. The views had changed already, and so instead of having just the views like we would have before, we would have them listed like this. That was similar in the document libraries as well. The ability to work with standard folders, that command doesn't use Microsoft's classic filter icon iconography because it's now sharing space with a menu that it wasn't sharing space with before. It gets worse if you have AI enabled because that AI block takes up an additional inch or so of your real estate on your monitor. So if you're running at a standard resolution, your breadcrumb trail gets really short really fast. All right, so take a look at those changes. I'm going to start with a list just to kind of give us a remembrance of what it used to be like. We used to have our new button here in the left-hand side, and then we would have our command bar, and we would have our remaining actions under our menus. So that portion hasn't changed that much. You know, in terms of the view names being broken out, what has changed is, again, they've taken them from here and they've moved them over to here, and they've taken these elements and they've moved them over to here. So if we look at the library, you can see we have a shift. Things that were on the right are now on the left, things that were on the left are now on the right, and we've renamed things and we've changed the visual look of things. So they aren't flat text any longer, they now appear as pills. And so again, that can be a little jarring because people don't normally associate the pill iconography as a menued iconography. That's not a classic SharePoint or Microsoft UI approach. It actually violates the way they normally do their UI. But they're trying to streamline and modernize and also kind of make the tool look a little slicker. And in so doing, they've adopted a handful of things which can potentially cause some issues. They have put menu icons on the views, which hopefully will remind you, and they've started to pop up help as you access things to let you know where some actions are. And I think that's because they must have gotten a ton of complaints, and so they're trying to guide new users so that you get a little comfortable with where the changes are. But as you can see, this command bar here, it takes up quite a bit of space, and it's now sharing space here with our breadcrumb trail. And so if I were to switch over to our menued option here and start to drill down, you can see the breadcrumb trail is going to start to build, and it starts to push the menu off to the right. So you can see our menu will start to change over here because it gets a little shorter and a little shorter, but they can only do that so much. And then at some point you get to a point where you'd begin to run out of space. So if you had a nested set of subfolders, you would run out of space. And what they do then is they just have things turn into a menu effectively. And so then you have the menu option here that would show you the remainder of what's going on. The library does have this menu that we're looking at here, things like the new folder and then the file upload commands, and those are also available over here. So that's part of that duplicative iconography and functions that I was mentioning before. So I don't know that they'll stay with that being a duplicate of function. Microsoft doesn't tend to do that often, but if they do, then great. Users just go with the path that they're comfortable with. If they don't, I would bet that this one here is the one that's going to hang around. And so I would train users on the create or upload button. I wouldn't train them much on this one over here. The other menus then, we have the traditional ellipse menu that you're used to. It's been around for a while. We have this menu here. This is the settings icon, but it's a menu here. I guess you could think of these as settings. I don't, but that's Microsoft's choice as far as what they've done from an iconography perspective. But this is an important menu because things like the list structure as far as compact, which I use all the time to save space, and it makes the double line of text and multi-line of text fields not wrap, so that everything stays on a consistent single line, which I really enjoy. So that feature, you get to from here. In addition, some of the other things that you probably use day in and day out, like editing the view, automatically saving the view, those are available from here as well. But each one of these is a menu. And so you can also save the view here. You can't edit the view from here, which I always thought was weird because I would have put the edit view here, but they didn't do that. So you can save from here if you make a change. You'll notice there is unsaved changes as opposed to before it would just give you the asterisk character letting you know that there were changes pending in the background. Here it's now overtly telling you that this view has not been changed or has not been saved, which I think is good, right? That's a positive change. Then you have your filter commands. This is the new filter icon. It brings up the filter panel. The old filter icon is here. That's what it used to look like. They may, clone that, put that over here at some point. But this is, again, not the standard icon. This looks to a lot of people like a menu. So again, a little bit of training and orientation just so folks know what they're looking at. These are the types that are in the library currently. They stay persistent until you start to use any of the filtering. So if I filter by category, and then I filter my org. I know I'm down in accounting, so I'm probably going to see accounting, but it'll work. So we'll filter by accounting. You'll notice my filters now appear here. The ability to remove one of those individually is not obvious on its face. A lot of people will click clear and then have to go in and reset all of them. But you can simply click on an individual one and it will remove it. So again, a little bit of training, I think, would very much help folks. And then last, the additional views, if you have a lot of views associated with your library, are available on the view drop-down menu, and then you can come in and choose the views that you want to work with. And obviously there's a great big add view button, which is good because that makes it very easy for folks to recognize how to add their own personal views to construct the work environment that they want to work with. So again, we recommend a little bit of training, perhaps a job aid for folks, just so they understand the changes that are outlined here. I believe we share all of our presentations with everyone that's on the call, so you'll have access to the deck that I've put together for today, and you can take those and compile them into a single page for the features that you think are important for your staff to be aware of. And with that, I'll hand things back to Hayden.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ken. Yeah, as Ken was saying, we know it can be a little jarring when change happens, especially this dramatic of a change. So familiarizing yourself and your other end users with the different features and where various menus live is kind of critical. So might be a perfect time for you and your organization to go through some internal training and assist end users with this change. Let's go ahead and hop into the next presentation, which is the new modern FAQ web part taught by Dylan. Over to you, Dylan.
Everyone, yeah. So in today's presentation, we'll go over this the new modern FAQ web part. Specifically, it's focused on leveraging AI for people to have the Copilot license to generate those FAQs, and then we'll also just walk through how you can change the FAQs yourself and some of the settings it has. But yeah, basically what it allows, this FAQ web part allows, is to just easily generate based off documents you have, pages, as in SharePoint pages, some of the different note apps and things like that, or even meeting recordings to generate and use the AI to help generate FAQs based off that. It'll also allow you just to import your own question and answers that you may have in plain text, and I'll show that feature as well. So it really, what's nice about it is, one, you have a dedicated FAQ web part, and then two, just how easy it is to get the ball rolling on FAQs. Because often what I've seen is that a lot of people will set up something like an FAQ web part for a department, and then they just may want to have a couple to get that FAQ started, and then gather feedback from their users on what would be additional FAQs they would want to see there, but they want to have something to start with. And so something like this can be really nice to start generating FAQs based off content. And then this web part even does have the ability as well to allow users, if you want, to provide questions that they think would be useful as well. And then you can even add those in, and I'll show that feature as well, which can be turned off or on. And one thing to note as well, while this web part's in preview, I'm going to cover the features that I can demo for you today, but there is new features coming out to it, and some of you may or may not have more features, may have less on that web part as it's in preview and they're still rolling stuff out. But one of the ones I'll show, which I put in this slide as well, is the different the purpose dropdown, which it basically allows some additional context for the type of FAQs you're generating. And so we'll walk through a scenario using that one of those purpose types for the generation. One other thing I'll note as well is that the actual generating of the FAQs requires the Copilot license for you to have it to leverage the the LLM to generate the answers. But anyone can consume it, because once the FAQs are generated, it's essentially just text in the web part. So there's no license required to consume the content of it. This is just you need the license to use the AI for generating the FAQs based off your content. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and bring my example over here. So I've got a FAQs page set up, and you can see, just to give you the visual, we'll walk through it, but I've already got an FAQ that was generated here. And basically what it has is categories. and then the questions, and then you can expand and see the answers. And the answers will allow for rich text as well. So if you wanted to, after it generated something, you could go back and completely change it or add in images if it's more of a technical how-to, like maybe sharing a link or something, how that works, or, whatever it may be, downloading or opening a document on the desktop, and you want to provide some screenshots in there. You can do that kind of stuff with FAQs, and we'll show that as well. So this could be nice as opposed to if maybe right now you have like full how-to pages and using like text area web parts and things like that. You can potentially consolidate that into this FAQ web part. So what I'll go ahead and do is edit my page here, and we'll walk through it. And I'll do the scenario of creating an FAQ based off a policy document. So what I'll do is I'll create a new web part on the page here. And so the web part in particular is the FAQ. So it's actually called FAQ. So if you have it available in your tenant, it would show up here. And if you have that Copilot license, you'll be able to test it out with generating content. And so what I'm going to do is add a policy document I have. And I have the policy document open here as well. So it's something that's hosted on another site that I have access to. So this is that policy document that I have that I'm going to use to generate the FAQs from. So it's got a bunch of pages in here. It's a Word document. And what I'll do is I'll actually come into the new web part here in the property pane. And I can even maybe zoom it in a little bit just so we can see it a little easier. So what I have access to in this, my version of the web part here is this reference field, purpose field, and these two is what I'm going to use to generate. What I'll do is I'll actually even just go ahead and say the purpose, I'm going to choose policy. There's a 4 right now available. So, if it's specifically something related to events, products, policies, you could select one of those. If it doesn't match one of those, you could leave it as general. You could also just not select it. Basically, what this is offering is to give context to the LLM to help you generate the FAQs that you would want for, if it's policy, I could select policy, it makes it easy. Something else you can do just to explain in this reference field, besides me just adding a file, and it says in here as well, you can just type plain text in here. So if I can say, this is more of a technical FAQ or something, or this is for end users, or you could enter whatever you want here to provide context to help generate better FAQs if you want, or something that's, focused towards a different audience. You can just type that into there, but you don't have to worry about it as well. It's not like you have to do that and get into prompt engineering or anything. So what I'll show is I'll just hit the add file. And what I currently have access to here, it's either just searching under all, files, meetings, or pages is what mine currently has in this version of the web part. And so for mine, maybe I'll do files, and then I'll search for my policy, which is called Bioscope Policy and Procedure Manual. I can see it just came up for me there. So I'll just select it. So now I've got that as a reference. You could see I could add more references as well if I want to do different sources. But what I'll go ahead and do now that I've got that selected is select policy. So I've got my policy document, select my purposes policy, and I'll just hit the start button. So it'll start to generate basically. And what it'll do first is it'll come through that document, and I'll go ahead and expand it, and it'll create categories for me. And it'll just do step by step, allow you to potentially change it if you want, and or just continue on. And let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit. So what you can see is it generated a handful of categories for me for my FAQs. And you can see I could come in here and say, well, I don't know if I really want this many different categories. I could change what the categories are. I could do that. But maybe just start out, you could leave it, just to test it and just walk through the whole process and make changes at the end. But at any step in the process, you can edit these, any of the steps. I could even add my own category here that I don't see displaying actually. But what I'll do now is do the next step, which would be draft questions. Now it's going to generate questions under the different categories, basically. So you can see it's going to come through and generate those questions under each category. And then once again, I'll be able to go in and potentially change those questions if I want at this point. Maybe I'm like, well, I don't really need this many FAQs to get started for my document. or maybe you only want a certain categories that have so many questions, whatever it is. I can drag and drop these, edit them. I could drag them down if I want to do a different order. I could also wait till the end, like I was mentioning. So what I'll do is I'll just keep going through the process. So I've got categories, questions. Now let's draft the answers. Now what it's going to do is for each question in a category, go ahead and generate an answer for those different questions. And this little bar here, so we'll see like this kind of little gradient bar that just shows me the progress of, how many questions it's made it through so far to let me know. Of course, if I wanted to stop it, I could just hit the stop here as well if I don't need it to keep generating. But you can see it's going through and it's generating answers. And what it's doing is it's using my particular policy document to generate those answers from. So that's the idea here. You have some source and it'll try to use that source to generate the answers based on the questions it generated or potential questions that you added to the web part and get answers for those as well. What I'll do while we're waiting for that one as well is I'll just show you one other option as well that you can do for generating your FAQs. So let's go ahead and just real quick while we're waiting on that, the new FAQ. And what I want to show you real quick, what I did is I did the get started for my FAQs and added a reference. But you can also, whether it's to your existing FAQs or a new web part, do the import feature as well. And what this allows is, let's say you've already gone around the office or done some polls or whatever, you've already got kind of some FAQs jotted down, whatever it may be, or maybe you have them on a page already. You could potentially just try copying and pasting those into the import here and then have it try to organize those for you in the web part. So this is another approach too, which is instead of just referencing a live document, I could just try to import by copying and pasting using the import from text, as opposed to using a document or page or a meeting recording as the source. So just to show you that as another starting point for your web part or to update your existing one. So I could come into any area potentially and, start to add in, maybe do an import or something of that nature. But anyways, let me go back. I think that web part's almost done. Scroll back up. Looks like it's done. So you can see right now it has this keep it option. So, I could review it and decide if I want to keep it or not, or if I want it to retry or maybe, add something else to the context. But for now, let's just do a keep it. So essentially now the web part is fully generated. So now it's essentially just text on the page. So at this point, I could leave this reference here, and then at any point I could come back to this web part and refresh answers if I feel that the policy has changed in my case. And there is a new feature rolling out, which mine doesn't have currently. Some of you may see it or not, which is to sort of just edit existing answers and provide what it would update it to. So you could see in this example, policy date changed, for instance, or something, or a date changed, for one of the FAQs. So you can regenerate those. You can also come into any of these areas. So like in this answer, you can see you could potentially have rich text in here. You could change out, add some links, images into the answers, tables, bullets, whatever you may want there. I could also use this little draft with AI button as well. So I want to draft something additional into the answer, or I created a new question on the fly here. I just went in and to add a question, and you could use a little draft AI within the text box, the text area box as well. So it's kind of just giving you different areas where you could leverage the AI to help you with generating your answers, basically. Let's see real quick also. Yeah, so what I'll show as well, just using any one of these, I can use the move up and down. I can drag and drop. I can move them to a different category. I could hit delete. I can always change these out. Now that it's live, any user should be able to see it. One other thing as well, just if you want to, instead of the chevron, use the plus and minus, it gives you that option as well. What I'll do is I'll also show you this other setting here. So this enable submit question field. So it's turned on by default. So what that does is down here, you can see it provides a box down here which says cannot find what you're looking for, submit a question to the FAQ author. And so let's say I want to, as an end user now, this is, I'm seeing this, maybe I have a question that I want to submit because we've allowed this feature to be turned on to gather some feedback. So I could just put is a FAQ. So I'll just put an example question into there just to show you how that functionality works. So it gives me a pop-up, your question is shared with the FAQ author. And what that does is whenever I come in to edit the web part, hit the add question, it'll now be available as one of my questions that I can select from. So you can see when I click into the box now, there's this question requested by viewer. And so I've just got that one. But I could add that in now if I wanted. I could click it and potentially, change it and generate a answer for it or enter my own answer for it. So it's just something that's nice. Let's say you use this to go ahead and get a few FAQs started, and then you can start just gathering feedback. So instead of needing to maybe make a separate like Microsoft form or something like that to get some FAQs gathered or running around the office, you could use this feature maybe for a period of time. And then if you don't want it, you can just toggle that box up. And then that box will no longer be at the bottom for users to, suggest questions, basically. So yeah, I would say what's pretty nice about this is just to actually have a dedicated FAQ web part instead of needing to, maybe sort of build one, which is pretty nice, and to have that rich text in those expanded fields. So if you do already have some pages or documents, you could try this out if you have a Copilot license just to see what you get. And then, always just change it to, if you don't like the responses, you can always change them out as well. So it can just be nice to have in that sense. And I think, just keep a lookout as well. So, even in the documentation, new features are rolling out to this. So you may even have a few more available than what I was demoing today. So they are adding in, new stuff to this as well while it's, still in preview at the very least. So just double check. Yep, so requires Copilot license. We think we covered most of those topics. So yeah, I think this will conclude my presentation, and I'll hand it back over to you, Hayden.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dylan. It's always exciting to see what new AI features are rolling out, and anything with AI, letting the machine do the work, but of course, double checking the accuracy to make sure that there's no issues or mistakes happen seems to be the best policy. So very exciting stuff. Thank you, Dylan. Last but certainly not least, Leona is going to be teaching us all about the common mistakes that we see in SharePoint. Over to you, Leona.
Awesome. Thank you, Hayden. Yep, today in our presentation, we're going to be covering pretty common habits that we see occur with our clients, kind of the steps on resolving them. Those habits will be kind of in relation to putting all your documents into a singular document library, syncing documents to document libraries, or syncing to document libraries, improper permission configurations, and also the different types of site templates that they might want to use or misuse. So go ahead and start off with the all documents in a singular document library. A lot of times we see this stem from either your new organization to Office 365. You get your default site collection, you get on there, you see documents on the left side of the page, you click it, you say, hey, this is where documents goes, you start drag and dropping your content in there. And over the years, you have one singular document library that has probably folder structures with subfolders and subfolders underneath of that. That is probably your organization's hierarchy. And you kind of spiral out of control that way. Or you could also be maybe living on file servers right now. You need to get off of them. You might run a migration tool and to pick up all that content, drop it off into SharePoint, all into one single document library. Realistically, I would suggest not doing that. Microsoft does have some limitations that exist there, like the 30 million files can exist in a single document library. Now, I'm going to say that is a hard limit. You're going to have problems far before 30 million records, realistically. There's also a soft cap of 100,000 records as well, which then you start to run into problems with security, breaking inheritance, restoring inheritance, sharing and things as such with a document library. So even at 100,000 records, I would say you probably want to stay away from that as well. So how do we get away from this? Realistically, you want more document libraries. And ideally, you would go down the path of site collections. So you would have multiple site collections, whether that be through your business units, your departments, your functional groups, however you guys categorize your organization, maybe even projects as well would fall into a new site collection. Then when you do have that site collection, let's say HR is a prime example, they're going to have onboarding forms, they're going to have templates, have different libraries for different concepts, put that content in there. Now, if it's a one-off document, you say, hey, you know what, we don't need a single library for a single document, but think about long-term. Think about the next 5 years, next 10 years on how your content might expand to, and start kind of thinking about long-term goals versus the immediate need of, hey, we just throw all this stuff into a single document library. The smaller your content size up front can save you heartache in the long run, eventually when you have to maybe migrate that content out of that large library into those smaller ones. So again, ideally, more site collections, more document libraries will save you pain and heartache in the future. The next thing we're going to talk about is this syncing of document libraries. Now, Microsoft does allow you to sync. For those who are unaware, whenever you go to a document library, there is a sync feature available to you, which acts as a network drive. For those who maybe have been in the industry for a long time, they're really kind of hard-coded to the idea of saying, hey, I like my File Explorer. I like seeing my little button there to go to my network drive, and I engage with my content. And that's a pretty hard habit to break for a lot of people. Microsoft does provide it to you. However, OneDrive has some limitations that you need to be aware of. And also, depending on your connectivity, you might have issues with syncing. Your account might need to be re-authenticated. There might be mismatches between kind of versions that you have on your machine versus what's in the cloud now. I just go, hey, we might want to try to rectify that. So one is that there is a 300,000 file cap to what you can sync to. So if you sync to one library that has 100,000 records, another library has 100,000 records, and a third library that has 100,000 records, you're at that cap now, which means you cannot sync anything else. No matter how many different sites you have, once you get to that 3,000 item limit, whether you have downloaded those files or they have just been synced in general, that will be a hard limit for you. You do also run into performance issues as you get closer to that. So again, even though there is caps, just be aware you're going to probably experience much pain before you get to those caps. Realistically, I would say use the browser. There's far more robust controls that exist inside the browser. Again, with OneDrive syncs, you don't get any sort of metadata as of this moment in time. Hopefully in the future you might, but also you don't have to worry about the file that you're engaging with. Is it an outdated version? Is my OneDrive syncing right now? Is it having any sort of errors along the way? I see the number of times I see tickets come in saying, hey, I'm having issues with this one file. Can you help us troubleshoot it? And it's mostly either, again, connectivity issues, client-side issues. Going to the browser allows for those to kind of be circumnavigated. Again, if you still wish to do it, you can, but also please try to limit how often your OneDrive syncing to a repository or repositories inside of SharePoint. Also, another thing that I wish to bring up that is not documented here, there is a number of different limitations that exist with OneDrive syncs as well. Like in your normal File Explorer, there is a 255 character limit based off the pathing. So if you do have a complex folder path, sync to a lower level in that folder path so then you cannot run into one of those limitations of how long the path URL can potentially be. Next thing we're going to talk about is going to be permissions. Now, permissions is going to be kind of a multifaceted problem. It's going to be ranging from configuration of your owners, your members, and your visitors. A lot of times people might just throw people into the wrong group for simplicity's sake. Realistically, you should probably have 1 or 2 owners. The members should be users who are contributing to this site, and then also readers or visitors should be consumers of data. Also, sharing is something that we'll cover here in a minute as well, which is the idea of saying, hey, how should we configure sharing to potentially reduce problems in the future? So for the idea of configuring permission, so let me go ahead and pull up a site real quick for us. So you have a site collection, and by default, every single site inside SharePoint will have its default groups, which will be the owners, members, and visitors. These are the groups that you have here. We can configure them, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. If you are going to be assigning users who are meant to consume data, put them into the visitors group. They do not need to be members or owners if they are just meant to consume data. If they are meant to manage content, you have to ask the question of what level of management of content do you want them to have? There is edit rights, which I think normally is a little bit too much power to the average end user. You might want to use what we call contribute. So it comes down to a question of, are they managing content, or are they managing content and structure? Content being the files or the list items, while structure means new document libraries being built, document libraries even potentially being deleted by somebody. Should you put that much authority into the hands of the average member of a site, whether that be a department or a functional group or whatever you wish it to be? And lastly, are going to be owners. Realistically, I'd say probably IT is going to be an owner, and or maybe one or two kind of real power users of a site. These are going to be users who need to understand that they're going to be managing permissions, structure, content, and so they need to be aware fully of what all that entails. Going to the idea of, again, the difference between edit and contribute. If you ever do need to make an adjustment to the members group, because again, I go edit is a little bit too much power normally, please select your group, go to your edit permissions, and change it from edit to contribute. Contribute is management of content, and edit is management of content and structure. So please be aware, limiting the user's ability to do what they do to the most minimum level is what you should always do first and foremost, so then you don't accidentally share content they shouldn't have access to. Next is going to be the idea of sharing. I know that I harp on sharing all the time. If you watch our webinars, sharing is a scary thing. By default, your organization will probably have sharing to internal members, so it means you can share with other members of your organization if they have a domain account. Each single site collection as of right now has a default configuration that you can go ahead and click on the gear icon if you're an owner of the site. Go down to site permissions. There is a change how members can share. You click on this little menu will pop up. This will dictate who can share on your site. By default, Microsoft gives it to members and owners, which I think is one of those things where you give too much power to the end user until they understand the ramifications of their actions. Whenever you do have this, and you click that share link or that copy link in any of your document libraries, you are saying that I'm granting somebody else access to this object, whether that be the default one of everybody in the organization or specific people that I dictate. That means that now record has broken its inheritance, which means it's no longer inheriting permissions from the parent. So if you adjust permissions on a document library, that file or folder is now orphaned, and it's not inheriting those new adjustments unless you go down and adjust those individually. So I might also suggest limiting this to owners until you have educated your users well enough on how to share properly, when to click the button. Make sure, again, 99% of SharePoint is knowing where to click to get to the right thing and do the right thing. So again, I would really suggest the configuration of this and also limiting the access to your users to what they should be able to do and not just granting them access to more things out of laziness. The next subject we're going to be talking about is going to be the idea of the different types of templates that Microsoft gives you. A lot of times people will spin up brand new sites, whether they be through Microsoft Teams or through the Office portal or through different means, and they get a bunch of extra stuff. Again, one of our clients right now is experiencing the pain point of having hundreds and hundreds of teams, and now all these groups exist, and the naming conventions are all out of whack, and things are out of control. I go, please be aware that we want to always, again, do the minimum amount of stuff that we can provide to the users in the sense of functionality and extra kind of bloat that exists. So to start off, there's going to be realistically about 4 types of templates that we're going to be talking through. The first one will be the idea of the communication site, which you can see right here. You can get to this page, by the way, if you go to your admin portal, go to active sites, and then you hit new. This menu will pop up here. Communication sites. These are meant to be kind of dissemination of information. They're not meant to be primary document management platforms. They're meant to be news-centric to go, hey, maybe the home page of your intranet would fulfill the goal of a communication site. It's meant to be a launching point, disseminate news and information to your user base. HR might also have a communication site as well, where they might have a bunch of resources for employees to come consume stuff from them. Again, this is more for information. The next ones, which will be the team site variants, will be more of the workhorses of your organization. There's going to be realistically 3 types of team site templates that we're going to talk through. There's going to be a team site without a group, a team site with a group, and then there will be Microsoft Teams team sites. We're going to start off with the most basic version, and they will kind of keep stacking more features on top of each other as we go through them. So if you want to make a bare bones team site, which I would say is primarily your workhorse for maybe document management, you will actually want to scroll down on this page here, click this browse more sites, and then you get taken to here in which you have team site defaulted. This is going to be a site that just solely acts as a document management platform. It has no additional bells and whistles in the sense of doesn't have any groups, planner, mailboxes, Microsoft Teams integration, none of that stuff as of this moment. Now, you can always enable those things as you go through it. If you say, hey, you know what, in 6 months from now, we think we actually want to have a shared mailbox for this and a planner related to this group. Or maybe we want to have that be integrated into Microsoft Teams. You can do that. You can only go in one direction, though. So as we go through the rest of these, this is kind of a linear path. You cannot go backwards. So you can create your brand new team site, which is kind of like what we saw a moment ago on my little HR demo site that I had here. It is meant to just be a site that has document libraries, list, put stuff in there, do your work day to day. Next is going to be the idea of the group site, which will be this large button right here. This will create a team site that then also has a group associated to it, which will include a shared mailbox, AD group in your Active Directory, and then also a planner. So you get additional kind of bells and whistles that might have a little bit more integration with the rest of Office 365. And then lastly is going to be the team side of things. So if you go to your Microsoft Teams and you were to click into here and you click on this little new button and you say new team, this will create a SharePoint site on the back end that will hold the documents for that team. It will also create the Office 365 group. It will create the planner, create the shared mailbox, but also gives you the new Teams integration piece as well, which means you get the chat features and all those other things as well. So again, please be aware that, hey, as you build these things, they come with more things attached to them. So if you say, hey, we care about document management first and foremost, make a team site without a group. If you do want those extra bells and whistles, make sure you choose the one that really fulfills your needs. If you don't use the Teams aspect at all, don't make it via Microsoft Teams. Go to the admin portal and make it there. If you do need that Teams aspect, then go ahead and make it through Teams. Additionally, like I was saying before as well, if you do start off with the blank team site, there is in the gear option the ability to say connect to a new Office 365 group. If we were already connected to a group, there would be the option of connect to a new Microsoft team. So you can always increment upwards to get more functionality, but you can't go backwards. One more thing that I do wish to also inform you guys about is that if by chance you do build those extra pieces moving outwards, like the teams aspect or the groups aspect, they do now have propagation of deletion of them. So if you say, you know what, we really don't want this group that's called HR, somebody made a team called HR later, 3 years ago, we want to take HR back. If you delete that group, it will propagate outwards and delete the Microsoft team. It will delete the SharePoint site, it will delete the planner, or delete the mailbox. So just please be aware, again, try to do the minimum amount of stuff you can, because else you might have heartache in the future. So with all that being said, I hope this has been very educational for you guys, and I'll go ahead and send it back on over to you, Hayden.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leona. These are things that we see and assist clients with every single day. And so if you see some of these items that you know that you and your team struggle with, feel free to reach out to us, as we're here to always help. Thank you, Leona, and all the other presenters for today's presentation. That does conclude the learning portion of today's webinar. I hope we've been able to spark some new interest for functionality for you and your teams that you guys can go and explore. Please be on the lookout in your email for our next webinar. We look forward to learning with you again soon. Before we segue into our live Q&A section for this webinar, I do want to remind everyone that all the webinar notes, slides, and recordings will be on our learning portal for easy access to everything discussed today for our SharePoint support clients. If for some reason you don't have access or would like to gain some access to this learning portal, please reach out to us after the webinar. Our learning portal is, again, where you and your team will get all the materials, just not from just today's webinar, but any future webinar recordings and materials as well. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and segue into the open live Q&A forum. If you don't plan on staying with us for the live Q&A, I want to say thank you again for learning with us today. On the screen, we're showing instructions on how to raise your hand and ask a question to one of our presenters. Your mic will be unmuted and questions will be taken in order of hand raised. Okay. That sounds good. Well, I hope you guys have a great rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.